Hi, this is Starkie Sowers. Welcome to the Nutrition Mission Podcast from Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market. So the idea of this, Jessica, is to bring all sorts of things to the public's view as well as to some audible situations. So if you're driving down the road or you're doing this, you can listen to some of the episodes. We're going to have all sorts of topics, everything from like tea to sports nutrition to keto diets and the popular diets of the time. You excited for this?
So excited. So make sure you guys subscribe to our channel, and you can go find us on YouTube, like Starkie said. So are you guys ready?
All right.
We're all about the Nutrition Mission.
All right. So this is going to be like a fun one. Actually, I'm real excited about this. We're actually having a company make us vitamins, a vitamin line, and you're seeing part of it right here. The name of the company is Ancient Nutrition. Jordan Rubin and Dr. Josh Axe, of course, you might know those guys. Those are the guys who basically made collagen as well as bone broth and bone broth proteins literally come to existence. Literally was laying dormant for like probably 100 and some odd years. If you've never heard that story, I'll tell you the story. It basically goes like this. Ultimately, when it comes to bone broth was the fast food before refrigeration. You looked at ancient cultures such as Chinese cultures, as well as Ayurvedic cultures, as well as all sorts of different cultures, especially here in the United States. What happened was we used bone broths as a staple every single day. All right. So that said, what is in bone broths that are so significant? First of all, loaded with collagen, loaded with specific amino acids like glutamine, which is incredibly beneficial for the gut, loaded with things like glucosamine glycans, which as well as NAGs, N-acetylglucosamines. What are those? Those are the constituents that help to build proteoglycans. What are proteoglycans? Cartilage, tissue, and the joints. All right. So obviously when they started pushing forward the idea of eating bone broths, it literally has caught on. We have bone broths not only in the refrigerator, we have bone broths in the capsule form, we have bone broth in the powder form. Then the purified form of bone broths, of course, is collagens. And there's different sources. It could be beef bones, it could be chicken bones, it could be turkey bones, whatever the case might be. If you've never made bone broth soup, it's pretty simple and pretty easy. So here comes Thanksgiving on the roll. Take the bones that are left over and all the carcass and all the little garbage and everything left over, put it in a crock pot, fill it with water, chop up a little bit of lemon, put it in there, and maybe put in a couple of tablespoons or 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Let it simmer for 2 days or literally at least 18 hours. And you'll go in and start pulling out whatever is remaining left of the bones, right? And they're literally like feathers and they just bust in your hand. All those bone nutrients, the calcium, as well as all the other nutrients that I mentioned, literally dissolve into the broth itself, and it ends up becoming incredibly nutritious. So Dr. Jordan Rubin, as well as Dr. Josh Axe, came to our stores and did some lectures. Ultimately, in one of the lectures, Dr. Josh Axe said, Americans don't have a vitamin deficiency. They might have subclinical vitamin deficiencies like B complex, for instance, when it comes to insomnia, irritability, things of that nature. Those are subclinical possible situations. But what they end up having is a collagen deficiency because we don't use bone broth soups as our fast foods like we did back in the day. So now let's go a little bit deeper. So when it comes to healing the gut lining and helping with food sensitivities and food allergies, using bone broth soups as well as collagens do a significant job on rebuilding the stomach wall back up. The other thing is amazing for joints. So anyways, I'm listening to this guy's lecture. I'm thinking to myself, whatever, bone broth, there's a little craze, it's going to go away. Well, it hasn't gone away. At the same time, when he said that, it literally like a light bulb just went off in my head going bing, bing, bing. Guess what, dude? That's probably a smart idea. You lift weights, you pound out this, you take supplements, you do all this stuff, but you're really not nourishing the collagen back. And every summer I would get to a point where I always go, okay, I want to diet, I want to harden up, I want to see my abs. And I would take a liquid collagen every night made by Health Direct. And so I would take it at night, go to bed. Makes you sleep incredibly well because it's high in glycine, which is an inhibitory amino acid, shuts the brain off. And so anyways, I would take it, go to sleep better. By the end of the summer of using it, I definitely leaned up. But the other thing that happened is my joints always felt better. Then I go off this stuff. A couple of months later, I go, I need to take more, glucosamine or more of this or more. And so when he said that, like a light went off and said, dude, what is up, man? You need to be on this forever. Or let's just try it and see what the difference is. Anyways, I go on it for a year. It's like my joints always feel good. My body feels better. My skin's better. Ultimately, bottom line is collagens end up being a significant factor. All right. That said, that's the story behind ancient nutrition. They've kind of exploded out from that point. So Jordan Rubin, in his quest to like make things cool, decided he'd come up with this place in Arkansas. Basically, just for lack of better terms, it's just like a wasteland where he bought this acreage there. And he decides, I'm going to make a biosustainable farm. And what's a biosustainable farm? All right. So basically what it means is everything that's on the farm is going to get recycled and reused. At the same time, the objectivity is to literally not only have solar power and everything like that, you become sustainable on your own. So the other thing that he did is like, okay, we're going to put nutrients back into the soil by harvesting at different times, cycle harvesting, doing all these different things. So that way we can ensure that we're getting nutrients constantly on a regular basis into the soil. Then the other thing that's going to happen, we're going to do nothing but grass-fed beef, as well as all the different types of animals like sheep and so forth and so on. So what does that mean? So that means when you create an environment like that, this is going to be kind of a really interesting situation. What it does is it actually helps with carbon recycling, carbon dioxide. In fact, it's more efficient than actually doing plants. You know, the whole push that's going on right now, which is we want to go plant, we want to get away from animals because of the carbon methanes and all the other different things that come up. Well, here's the deal. When you do biosustainable, grass-fed situations, you actually end up literally become a carbon consuming situation, carbon dioxide, and you actually help to reverse the carbon dioxide problem that we have going on more effectively than you could using actually just plants alone. So that's significant. So when it comes to a situation like that, highly significant. So we're talking with them, and of course they make a line of vitamins, a couple other different things. And they said, hey, why don't we make a line of vitamins for Clark? So we thought, hey, that's a great idea, and let's do that. I think that would be amazing. So Dave Smith gets on board. He's our buyer and says, okay, here's the things I want. I want like a multivitamin. I want like my line of proteins as well as other different things. And so we actually put it out. So let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, when it comes to vitamins, remember that vitamins, obviously, back in the 40s and 50s, as they were being discovered, they started isolating them, sometimes chemically manufacture them. In fact, Dr. Fernandez, which is one of my buddies, he's 97 now, actually used to synthesize vitamin C down in Buenos Aires, which, of course, obviously in South America, so Argentina area. So here's the deal. We can make chemically different types of vitamins. A lot of times people go, well, I don't want that. So let me give you a little history. So what happens, especially by the late 1970s, early 1980s, they found out that they could use coal tar. Yeah, coal. They could actually use coal, basically process it, use that as a starting point. It's carbon, right? I just need carbon to basically synthesize something. So they would basically chemically manufacture that. By the way, they do that with drugs and other different things like that. No surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people started saying, you know what? I don't want coal tar in my vitamins. I want natural foods like they used to be. Well, the problem that happened when they were isolating rice bran and other different things like that, you got like B1, like 1 milligram or 2 milligrams. Well, we want a higher potency. Well, what do they do now? Well, they don't use coal tar anymore. What they do now is they use biofermentation processes. See, specific bacteria and different types of microbes can eat different types of foods and, for lack of better terms, poop out amino acids and vitamins, right? I know that sounds gross, but you say, oh man, I wouldn't want to do that. Well, you have bacteria in your body, and every time you eat fiber, the bacteria eats the fiber and poops out hydrogen peroxide, which prevents bad bacteria from growing. The other thing that it poops out is short-chain fatty acids that feeds the colon lining. The other thing that poops out as well too is lactic acid, which kills bacteria. So you, believe it or not, are a biofermentation process going on. Remember, there's 1 trillion cells in the body, and there's 3 trillion bacteria hanging around trying to keep you healthy. All right? So this is a very normal ecosystem that's been going on forever. So let's do this. Let's take this and let's pull up. Here's a multivitamin. Let's pull up. Yeah, here's a B complex. I like this. So the potencies, once again, aren't huge, but they're not bad. It's like about 9 or 10 milligrams of B1, B2, about 5 milligrams niacin, about 20. B6 folic acid. They've actually supplemented some other things in here to actually give it to you in a full dosage. So it's a regenerative bacteria botanical blend that they put together. So it's not a chemical basis whatsoever. B12, they had to use cyanocobalamin because that's an animal source. And what they do with this is they actually ferment it with yeast to give you a full matrix. Are there other companies that do this? Yeah, New Chapter, as well as Mega Foods and some of the other different ones. But what's unique is a lot of these products that they got are from a biosustainable farm that they Jordan Rubin basically helped to create. Here's one of my favorite ones right here. This ends up being a women's multi. And what they use is a base for the vitamin itself is they use beets, use acerola cherry, which of course is rich in vitamin C. The other thing that you use in here as well too is guava and some other, which guava is, by the way, very rich in B vitamins. Lemon peel, all sorts of different stuff, kind of gives you an idea where they're getting these actual nutrients from. Very significant, all right? So B vitamins, multivitamins, zinc, as well as things such as turmeric. They actually grow turmeric and they bioferment the turmeric. And so the turmeric ends up being extremely easy to digest and use and get into the system, all right? So vitamin C complexes, acerola cherries, as well as other different things, organic sources, giving you actually a legitimate food source of vitamin C. What's the advantage? What's the benefit? All right. So when it comes to advantage and the benefit, obviously it's going to be a food source situation. The belief is it's going to absorb better, get in the system better. I'll be honest with you, I've seen research on both ends. Doesn't necessarily guarantee you that. A lot of the biofermentation stuff that's made in a laboratory, sometimes it's just as well, but the base of the food is actually going to be something that the body recognizes. So it might not reject it in some situations. The other thing, more critically, it's biosustainable. You're literally kind of got this farm that's making this stuff and making it happen. One of the things that they use yeast with it, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and that's what, of course, grows and makes a lot of these matrices happen, all right? So we've got animal stuff. We talked about collagen. This particular line obviously has bone broth as well as multi-collagen, as well as we also have a vegetarian source of protein, making it a really cool add-on. And finally, they literally just came out with this a couple of weeks ago. And this is in their ancient nutrition line. And I was wondering when this day was going to happen. I just was like, dude, when are glandulars going to get revitalized? In the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s. One of the things a lot of companies like Standard Process, as well as Nutridyne, which is no longer, as well as Civad, which is Davis backwards, Dr. Davis, renowned chiropractor that literally was one of the pioneers in inventing things specifically for what we would call the medicine side of like nutrition. So when it came to the doctors, the professional lines, these guys were using glandulars back in the day. All right, and what they would do is they would concentrate different things like liver and spleen and kidney. And so a lot of things would happen with that is, especially as the 60s and 70s came along, people said, where's the science behind that? There's not really significant science behind that. Why would a gland from like a cow going to help a gland from a human? It's just not going to happen, right? Now, of course, we know about stem cell technology and other different things. And obviously, or maybe we're thinking a little bit different because a lot of those uses are from there as well. But ultimately what happens is this. They made products, and we have products, and we still have glandulars on the shelf. Use adrenal glands. You'll notice it actually makes your adrenal glands perk up. You feel better, more energy, more stamina. So what happens, of course, is the sourcing on these particular things. These sourcings ultimately ends up being very critical where you get it, because the last thing you want to do is get some type of animal that's been injected with steroids and all these other different things, because it's going to follow that sort of a matrix. So before we get too far into that, let's get into the science, though. So when it comes to the science, finally, in the late 70s, they took radioactive isotopes. They extracted different glands like thyroid. And they mixed the thyroid with these radioactive isotopes, fed it to individuals, and to see if the actual gland tissue or the proteins from that actually made it to the thyroid. And of course, obviously, it did. So what they found is specific glands, actually radioactive isotopes that were identified in there, actually made it to the gland that they were eating, whether it's a pituitary gland, or whether it's the anterior pituitary gland, or whether it's the pancreas or the prostate, or whatever the case may be. They actually showed and substantiated that glandular material actually nourishes and helps to rebuild the glandular material in the body. All right. That said, you might be thinking, well, that sounds really crazy. All right. Remember the food source. These guys end up getting grass-fed, biosustainable animals, literally in like this pure environment, and they start making glandulars again. Okay. Mind you, there's still some out there, still on the shelf, but they're recreating the craze. I can't keep this stuff on the shelf. Let's look at some of these formulas, and just for the fun of it, let's read through some of the labels. So here's the organs blend. Remember, obviously, one of the things that Dr. Josh Axe, as well as Dr. Jordan Rubin were saying is these organ things are things that we used to eat back in the day that we don't. So what they've done here is they've concentrated it down, put it in a capsule form. So what kind of organs are in here? All right. So as we're going through here, once again, biosustainable. So we end up in a situation where we start reading through this. Fun little moment. And here we go. Obviously, liver tissue ends up being number one. They put beets in here on almost all of them. A couple different sources on liver, as well as heart, as well as in here kidney, as well as, let's see what else is fun, adrenal gland, pancreas gland, and a couple other little things such as spirulina added to it, and some mushroom matrices added together, okay? So basically what that is, it's like an organ formula along with spirulina, which we know is actually seems to help production of stem cells. All of it kind of together, literally giving you this like anti-aging formula together in one thing. The other thing that they did here as well too is they kind of made a multivitamin out of it. The other thing that they did, because they put in some vitamins and minerals in here, the other thing that they did here as well is they gave you kind of like a complete base of the nutrients to kind of fill that out. Let's talk about the male formula. This is kind of fun. We talked about renaming this section or this segment something a little bit different, and maybe you'll get the idea as we go along here. So once again, liver, okay? Beets, obviously great for circulation, nitric oxide production, things of that nature. So then we get to this, grass-fed bovine orchic. What is orchic? Well, they used to call it like sweetbreads or something like that. Hey guys, it's testicles, all right? This stuff has testicles in it, all right? So then it has grass-fed bovine prostate, as well as pancreas, as well as whole pituitary, as well as anterior pituitary, as well as spirulina, as we said before. So the other thing it has in here is heart. The other thing it has in here as well is kidney, and also has pancreas. Also ends up having adrenal gland, as well as a couple other things in here that makes it just kind of unique, such as aortic branch. What's the aortic? Aorta is out of the heart. You have the heart arteries that pump out. The aortic branch pumps actually through. That's the largest artery in the human body. So as it comes out, it's about the size of a garden hose. And it literally goes down through. Well, as we age, one of the things that happens with that garden hose, it starts to get calcified and becomes much more rigid. So then, of course, blood pressure goes up. One of the theories back in the day was you wanted to eat heart tissue to nourish the heart. Ultimately ends up in a great situation being in here, all the male formulas together. All right, they come out with a female formula as well too. Obviously, what are we going to find in this one? All right, so let's roll through here. Same thing, liver, beets, adrenal. So thyroid ends up being in this one as well. Pancreas, spirulina, some chaga mushrooms. So one of the things that we thought we might find in here actually doesn't end up being here, but it's kind of still a fun product. But it ends up having kidney as well as a couple of, there it is, mammary and uterus tissue. Sure enough, in there it is, making it a complete glandular formula for females. Unique to the product section. Ancient Nutrition, very unique company. Literally going back, finding those ancient nutrition moments, bringing it to light, bringing it to the forefront. And what's cool is we got the privilege of them making us a vitamin line. Definitely something unique to be able to find at the stores. All right, so it gives you a little history on glandulars, brings you up on to date what glandulars are. It's unique because like bone broth, I don't see these things going away. Right about the time I thought they were going to fall off the shelf, they came back in not only a big way, but a huge way. I think you should try them. I tried these last couple of days, and they feel pretty darn amazing. Have fun.